Unit 4, we have chosen question number 2 for you.
Is it just 3?
Yes.
Shut the door. I don't know if it becomes yours.
How does the role of the American president differ from that of a prime minister? In Britain, the prime minister must have served in parliament prior to assuming that office. Should the U.S. Constitution be amended to require prior government service of candidates for the presidency? Why or why not? In parliamentary systems, the role of head of state, a ceremonial official, and the head of government, an official who makes and implements decisions, are separated. Would you favor or oppose such a separation in the United States? Why? And when you are ready, you may begin.
The Prime Minister and the President differ in several important aspects. The party of the Prime Minister, before he is elected, must first achieve a majority in Parliament, and consequently elect from within the party the Prime Minister. In contrast, a nationwide election is held where delegates from each state are chosen to elect the President, known as the Electoral College.
Another drastic difference between the Prime Minister and the President is that there is no term limit for the Prime Minister. Unlike the President, who has a 2-term or 10-year term limit mandated by the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, once elected in 1979, remained Prime Minister through 1990, when she stepped down due to political pressure.
The removal process for the 2 executives are contrasted in that the Prime Minister can be removed with a vote of no confidence, impeachment, or an election where the opposite party takes power, whereas the President must be impeached or lose re-election. This removal process favors the congressional system, because the President does not have to fear being removed from office at any time.
Prior to becoming Chief Executive, the Prime Minister must first and foremost be a member of Parliament, whereas the President is not required to have held any sort of federal office. The Constitution should not be amended to require prior government service of candidates for the presidency because the term government service is hard to define.
What exactly qualifies as government service? President Dwight D. Eisenhower served in the military prior to his presidency, and his first time voting was for himself for president. However, he never served in any legislature or state government.
Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney's campaign is based on his being an outsider to Washington and thus lacking government service. However, he has government service as being governor of Massachusetts. Romney's website claims Mitt is not a career politician. He has spent most of his life in the private sector, giving him intimate knowledge on how our economy works.
This shows that although government service is not required to the presidency, it is too broad of a term to be defined in an amendment. Also, all of our presidents have either been in the military, a state government official, or a member of the national legislature. Thus, there has already been a precedent set for presidents to have been involved in some sort of government service. Therefore, no amendment is needed.
Once in office, the 2 executives vary greatly. The Prime Minister is not only the chief executive, like the President, but is also the chief legislator. Also, in the parliamentary system, the roles of head of state and head of government are separated. In Britain, the Queen is the head of state, which is mostly ceremonial, whereas the Prime Minister is head of government.
Queen Elizabeth II's duties as the head of state are epitomized in the upcoming Summer Olympics, which she is hosting in London, England. Current British Prime Minister David Cameron has set a time and manner restriction on the referendum that would liberate Scotland, exemplifying his duties as legislator.
The President is head of state in that he may host certain events at the White House, a power delineated in Article 2, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which declares, "You shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers." However, the President is also the head of government, as dictated in Article 2, Section 2, which gives him the power of Commander-in-Chief to fill vacancies and appoint federal offices.
These types of executives can be implemented in different ways. The semi-presidential system, as seen in Russia, has both a prime minister and a president that are both democratically elected. In France, there is also a semi-presidential system. However, the prime minister is appointed by the president. By having a semi-presidential system, the head of government does not get bogged down by the potentially frivolous duties of the state.
Although the 2 executives work together to lead their country, one is head of state and one is head of government. This clear distinction is seen in the G8 conference, in which the heads of government, not heads of state, attend.
We favor the semi-presidential system, especially the Russian form, because both officials are democratically elected. Each official has specific roles and allows for the head of government to act independently of ceremonial burdens. As Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist Papers, the true test of a good government is its aptitude and tendency to produce a good administration. Thank you.
This is wrong.
Yeah, did you email Mr. Mack the wrong things? I
Those
thought.
are the ones I had, the most recent one.
Really?
Yeah. If you change it on the computer, then I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. How is the election of the prime minister, or the appointment of the prime minister different in the United States, or different in Great Britain or parliamentary systems than in the United States in terms of the idea of civil discourse?
Well, you can say that in the parliamentary system, there really is no civil discourse. The parties themselves choose who is going to become the prime minister, and there's no chance for discourse. That the party just decides and says, all right, well, he can say, I'd like to be prime minister, and they approve him or not.
Should the president be required to appear before Congress from time to time to answer direct questions instead of Parliament? Or, yeah, what do you support? Do you support that, or do you think that he should just be able to go as he does now?
Well, as we've seen, starting with the fireside chats, presidents and other congressmen as a whole have talked to the citizens and the people of America in their own forms, as we've also seen with President Obama, who once a week has a YouTube video that comes out addressing the citizens, explaining agendas and what he hopes to do in the upcoming weeks or months.
I don't think it's that important for the president to do this because he has the State of the Union, as we saw last Tuesday, in which he has the perfect means of doing this. So I don't think that it's absolutely necessary because I think that he has other ways of doing it.
Yes, the president should have to come before Congress from time to time, as the prime minister does in the prime minister's questions, which happen on Wednesday, which is interesting. The president should address Congress because even though, because of the Constitution gives him the power as more of the chief executive, he does have jobs, he does do things that our chief legislator, and he should have the power to go to Congress and say, all right, this is what I want to get done, which is essentially what the State of the Union address is. However, the State of the Union is more for the people. But the president should be able to go to Congress and tell them things.
In your view, which system is more efficient in removing an unpopular executive?
I would say that the parliamentary system is easier to remove the executive because it's just comes down to a vote of no confidence, and that can be initiated by the parties within Parliament, and because of the coalition governments that they enable, it enables the it forces the prime ministers to essentially work with other parties to create a system in which third parties can have more of a say. So I'd say that it's the parliamentary system.
I agree with my colleague King because the prime minister and their parliament doesn't have to go through the impeachment process, which takes a very long time, and there's so much paperwork, whereas my colleague Keegan said you can just have a vote of no confidence.
I also agree with my colleagues that it's the parliamentary system, except for a different reason. Your question was if it was most efficient. In the parliamentary system, it is most efficient because they have these shadow cabinets where each party has their own executives, their own cabinet ready to go. So once they do have a vote of no confidence, as my colleagues mentioned, there's no extensive election period, and there's no campaigning or all the stuff that we're going through right now with all these primaries. The party, they have an election across the board. Whichever party takes the majority gets the power, and the shadow cabinet steps into place. It's 30 days. It's very efficient, and it's more efficient than our system.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of having a president chosen by the Electoral College?
An advantage of having a president chosen by the Electoral College is that if we got rid of the Electoral College, the president would no longer go to places with smaller populations. So then he would just go to large metropolis areas, Los Angeles, New York City, the places that have lots of the popular vote. And he would completely ignore cities like Reno or Elko, and they wouldn't matter to him. However, with the Electoral College, these people in Elko, their voice is just as important as the people in Los Angeles.
I think it's important to recognize with the Electoral College system that the representation does not necessarily, it's going off of what my colleague said, but Nevada has 6 electoral votes and California has 55. That does not directly reflect the percentage of population, so it enables the smaller states to have a bigger voice.
Who has a more important role as chief legislator, prime minister or the president?
The the Prime Minister has more of an important role because in the British parliamentary system it is all unilateral, which means we do not have three branches, it's all just one branch. So the role of the specific specified roles of the Prime Minister is that he is the chief legislator, where that is not the case in the President.
I would definitely say that our president, because the Parliament and the United Kingdom system, they have a queen, which though she's head of state, the prime minister should have all the roles of parliament, whereas our president has the roles of like keeping Congress in check, and though Congress also has a check on him.
I would definitely say our president it's a more important role as to be chief legislator, where the prime minister, it is his job to be the chief legislator. We don't expect it. Well, the American people view the president to have more powers than he actually does. And so he's the face of whatever Congress is doing. And currently Congress's approval rating is about 9% of Americans. And the president, whether he likes it or not, he's the face of this. And so people disapprove of Congress and people disapprove of the president. So it's more important for him to act as chief legislator in order to gain re-election or be an effective executive.
Is the presidency too big for one person? You guys talked about several different examples in your testimony of queens and prime ministers and presidential systems. Can we have both roles in today's day and age?
I feel that even though our president is looked to as the one guy who runs the country, the one person that all the citizens and the people of America look up to, we don't necessarily just have one person that runs the country. We have so many different branches. We have president, we have the Senate, we have the House, we have the judicial branch, which all act together to form the executive.
I think it'd be important to go back to the original plan, or it could be beneficial to go back to the original plan proposed at the Constitutional Convention, the New Jersey plan, in which there were 3 executives, one in charge of each branch of our system. So the judicial branch would have one president who overlooks the entire judicial branch, one over the executive branch and one over the legislative branch. And I think that semi-exists today with the Speaker of the House, but I think that a role in which he was closer to equal of the president in charge of the executive branch would be very beneficial.
I do think that the presidency has become too big for one person, and that the duties of our president should be separated as it is done in England and as France and Russia, as we've mentioned, where they have a ceremonial head of state and they also have a head of government. So the duties are separated, so that the head of government, the one who is actually doing things and making laws and governing, isn't burdened by giving medals or not that that's not important, but just ceremonial things and sometimes it's better to not be the face of the nation when you're trying to make hard decisions.
Did the framers intend to create an executive that was both head of state and head of the government?
It depends on which framer you're talking about. Alexander Hamilton wanted the president to be all-powerful and almost king-like, whereas some of the others didn't really want a leader at all, which is why, and their fears of such a strong leader were reflected in the Articles of Confederation, and where all of the power went to the states as opposed to a national government.
The framers who wrote the Constitution instilled the 10th Amendment, which is federalism, which is the states and also the government. So with head of state and head of government, the president is in charge of both keeping checks on the states and also the government as a whole.
We'll go ahead and stop there.
Head of state is
Of the states.
States.
Has nothing to do with federalism.
But you could use that in terms of, you could use it in federalism, but you gotta do it in a different way. Go ahead, feedback.
Do you want me to?
I don't think you answered Mr. Clark's first question about public discourse.
Yeah, no, we didn't.
I don't think you answered Corey's question about direct questions, and you sort of answered it. Miranda, I would suggest you make in your testimony, a cleaner distinction between, the section where you're talking about the Queen and the Olympics, and then the Prime Minister in Scotland. It kind of
Yes.
ran together, so it's a good comparison, but it was smashed together.
Okay.
It lost its effectiveness. If you want to think about the presidency being too big, if you could, you'd want to interview Robert Roush. He was the labor secretary under Clinton administration. He had no access to the president, so he went outside of the presidency and went to the media directly because the president had become so insulated with his closest policy advisors. And in numerous interviews, he said the presidency has become so big that with advisors that aren't approved by the Senate in terms of the cabinet, that he had to go outside. So that's just something to think about where.
EOP.
Yeah.
You guys, I was waiting for it.
Yeah. So that's something to think about. You guys answered the questions fairly well, and like I told another unit, you guys need to be concise, and brevity is the name of the game here. The more questions you get, and you can just, if you can get it in, get the answer and move on.
How many questions did we get, by the
7.
way? 7.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
We just need more in the questions.
Well, yeah, I think it took you a while to get to the answer, as a group. So, not bad overall, but those are just some things I saw.
In response to the more effective of removing a president, remember Japan's had 5 prime ministers in the last 3 years because they had so much political turmoil. So there's a good example of quick turnover of people they're not happy with. I think also you need to talk about the constitutional applications of impeachment, House, Senate, trial, to talk about how long it takes. You see there's a lot of paperwork around it, but you gotta be more be specific to it. You're right, it takes a long time. How many presidents have we impeached?
3.
2.
2?
Okay, 2 have gone through the whole process. 1
That's what I was thinking.
had articles drawn against him but resigned before
Okay.
that. So yeah, it's very ineffective. That's why it's not done very often. And it's very politically challenging, okay? Just look at Watergate. It's, oh my God, what happens when the president's wrong? You did a great job with the face of the president in terms of this idea of chief legislator. Talk about the media more, and that media's role in that. I think that's the one missing thing.
What was the answer to your first question, by the way?
Well, I wanted this whole presidential election thing that's going on right now, civil discourse. You know, we're going, I mean, that's what my question was. I'm trying to fast forward this to Unit 6 and, you know, I'm trying to give you questions
Yeah.
outside. Is there this blatant hatred of each other when elections take place in Great Britain when there's going to be a shift?
Okay, that's right. I didn't speak because I had no idea.
So what is the civil discourse in elections? How is the difference between a change of a prime minister and a change in a presidency playing to that idea of civil discourse?
Okay, well I think, parliamentary, it's like it's a change in like theology almost because they change parties, not necessarily people.
Right. That plays into civil discourse because they're talking about issues and not Mr. Oakes is the,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? They're not attacking each other necessarily. They're attacking the party's ideas, but not the fact that he has married 4 women, asked for an open marriage, has 4 illegitimate children, and he hasn't filed his tax returns in the last 16 years.
Okay.
Right?
A good historical example too is Winston Churchill loses the first election immediately following the World War II because of that fact. People are like, yeah, he's a great guy, but his policy is not going to work in the post-war. So that's a really important point.
Gabe, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna, I know in England, I don't know how long it is, but they've got very narrow times when they can campaign. So I would say
30
that,
days.
that keeps from inflaming the rhetoric.
Oh, okay.
That's what my question was,
Okay.
the civil discourse, right? Remember, we're bringing questions in from everywhere, so you gotta be prepared for it.
Well, yeah, the reason why we weren't prepared is because we've never talked about civil discourse in ever.
That's fine, and that's why we're doing it now.
Yeah.
Framers' intent, good job answering Alexander Hamilton. Who are other framers that had different
That
ideas?
was right?
Yeah, you're absolutely
Okay.
right.
Because I was like Alexander
That's where I was
Hamilton, and I
gonna
was
use
like,
it, yeah.
shot in the dark.
Patrick Henry hates the executive.
Okay.
Even though he's not at the Constitutional Convention, he still plays a major role in the debate.
And be careful, because Bill of Rights wasn't all the people at the Constitutional Convention.
No, it was at
Yeah,
Congress.
because you said that.
Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said Bill of Rights.
10th Amendment
Yeah,
is Bill
10th
of
Amendment.
Rights.
Yeah, but you said 10th Amendment and the Bill of Rights was part of the Constitution.
in terms of the debate
Yeah, it was
afterwards.
different.
William Patterson is the author of the New Jersey Plan, and he's the one who proposes the three-headed monster.
Yeah, okay, so I could, yeah.
It's okay. I'm just trying to give you guys some other places when you talk, because you did a good job, but there's different intent, so let's talk about who these different intentions are.
Patrick Henry hated executives, that was true.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, I don't know if you knew when you added ambassador, 'cause you guys
I know,
talked about.
this isn't,
This
this
is,
is
yeah,
not,
this
That's
is.
mostly the old one then. It's all, go print it before you
because
guys do
there was a
testimonies.
couple
You're gonna
parts
do
that,
testimonies.
Yeah, but it's.
that I knew were mine and that I read and I'm like, this is
But
not
didn't we
right.
save it on the computer?
I took out my flash drive, so I'm gonna not have been updated on my
Oh,
flash drive,
that's
that's why.
probably why, okay.
And then,
Yeah.
we can talk some more.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
anything else you guys wanna add?
Did you say in your testimony that the president doesn't have to fear removal?
Yes, they do.
As much as.
As much as the prime
Yeah.
minister, that's what we say.
Oh, okay.
It sounded
All I
like,
heard
Yeah.
was the president doesn't have to fear removal.
He doesn't.
Grover Norquist is proposing to impeach Obama.
Who is?
Grover Norquist.
Oh, excellent. How many times did, what's his name?
Oh, I guess we do
I'm
kinda
gonna
say
say
that. You know what, we do actually say that in that way, so
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I would maybe.
Oh, yeah, president does not have to be, well, at any time, but he does.
just some trivia
so.
for you too, you talk about how the president fires that chats, etc. President Obama did a Google Plus hangout this week. First time there was an all virtual interview apparently in White House presidential history, so
Okay.
Cool.
there you go.
Right.
Sweet, thank you.
Legend.